In the mid-1980s, rock and roll was wild, dangerous, and loud. Few bands captured that lifestyle better than Mötley Crüe. With songs about partying, women, and chaos, they became the face of glam metal in Los Angeles. But not everyone wanted to follow that path. While many young groups were copying the Crüe's leather, makeup, and attitude, another set of musicians decided they would stand apart. They wanted to create a band that was the polar opposite. No mascara, no spandex, and no songs about wild nights on the Sunset Strip. Instead, they wanted real music with depth. At the time, it was a risky move. The industry rewarded flashy acts that looked like Mötley Crüe, Poison, or Rat. Labels pushed for more glitter and more shock. But this new band believed rock could mean something deeper, something lasting. They wanted to connect to fans on a level beyond excess and scandal. Little did anyone know that decision would set them on a course that shaped the future of rock. And 35 years later, their choice to be different would become the very thing that kept their name alive. That band was Guns N' Roses. From the very beginning, they wanted to be the antithesis of the glam scene. Slash once said they hated the idea of being lumped in with the hair bands. Axl Rose made it clear they weren't about pretty faces and party anthems. They wanted grit, danger, and raw honesty. While Mötley Crüe sang about fast living, GNR sang about survival. Songs like Welcome to the Jungle weren't fantasies. They were reflections of the real, grimy Los Angeles streets. The band lived in cheap apartments, scraped together money for food, and poured their lives into their music. Their look was different too. Instead of shiny outfits, they wore ripped jeans, leather jackets, and scarves that looked like they came straight out of a thrift store. Their style wasn't polished. It was lived in. That authenticity attracted fans who were tired of the cartoonish world of glam. Guns N' Roses wanted to scare you a little, to show you the ugly truth behind the rock and roll dream. Ironically, that opposite approach is exactly what made them stand out in a sea of copycats. By 1987, Guns N' Roses released Appetite for Destruction, and the world of rock shifted overnight. At first, radio stations were hesitant. The songs were raw, the lyrics intense, and the band carried an unpredictable reputation. But when Sweet Child O' Mine exploded, everything changed. Suddenly, the so-called polar opposite of glam became the biggest band in the world. Unlike Mötley Crüe, who were known more for their scandals than for their artistry, Guns N' Roses were celebrated for both their music and their danger. Their debut album became the best-selling debut in rock history. The irony was impossible to ignore. They set out to avoid the glittering excess of the 1980s, but in doing so, they became even bigger than the bands they rejected. Fans who grew tired of endless party anthems now had something real, something that spoke to their struggles. And yet, success brought its own demons. The very fame they wanted to avoid was now consuming them. The tension between being authentic and being global rock stars would define the next chapter of their story. Success is intoxicating, and Guns N' Roses weren't immune. While they had set out to be the opposite of Mötley Crüe, the chaos of rock fame still found them. The band became infamous for showing up late to shows, for fights, for walkouts. Axl's unpredictable behavior often pushed the band to its breaking point. What made it worse was the intense media spotlight. Every fight, every delay, every outburst became front-page news. In many ways, they started to mirror the very chaos they had rejected. But musically, they remained in a league of their own. Use Your Illusion, I2 proved that they weren't just another hard rock band. They were artists pushing boundaries. Songs like November Rain and Civil War showed ambition that glam bands never attempted. Still, the chaos behind the scenes began to overshadow the brilliance on stage. Fans loved the danger, but they also feared the band might not survive it. They were living proof that being the polar opposite didn't protect you from rock and roll's darker side. By the mid-1990s, the cracks were too big to hide. Slash, Duff, and other members clashed with Axl. Creative differences turned into personal wars. Slowly, the original lineup dissolved, leaving Axl Rose as the only original member standing. For fans, it was heartbreaking. This was supposed to be the band that saved rock from superficiality, and now it looked like they couldn't even save themselves. Meanwhile, grunge had taken over. Bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam dominated, and Guns N' Roses looked like a relic of the excess they once stood against. For years, the name Guns N' Roses became more about what could have been than what was. Axl kept the band alive with new members, but it wasn't the same. The dream of being the polar opposite of Mötley Crüe now felt distant. Still, deep down, fans never gave up hope that one day the original magic might return. For nearly a decade, Axl Rose carried the Guns N' Roses name alone. He kept promising a new album, Chinese Democracy, but it took almost 15 years to arrive. By the time it was released in 2008, many had stopped believing it would ever happen. Critics were divided, fans were confused, and the band's legacy seemed shaky. Yet Axl refused to quit. His determination, however stubborn, kept the fire alive. Meanwhile, Slash and Duff were finding success in other projects. Velvet Revolver showed the world they still had the magic. But without Axl, it wasn't Guns N' Roses. The contrast with Mötley Crüe was sharp. Crüe had reunited, played tours, and leaned into their wild past. Guns N' Roses, the band that once rejected excess, seemed lost in a different kind of drama. Legal battles, rumors, and endless waiting. But the story wasn't over yet. The world would soon see that even after decades apart, the bond between these musicians was too strong to stay broken forever. In 2016, the impossible happened. Guns N' Roses announced that Axl, Slash, and Duff were reuniting. Fans who had waited for decades couldn't believe it. When the Not in This Lifetime tour kicked off, stadiums around the world sold out instantly. The band that wanted to be the opposite of Mötley Crüe had just pulled off something bigger than even Crüe ever did. A reunion that felt legendary, not just nostalgic. The shows were electric. Axl, older but still fiery, delivered with a passion that surprised critics. Slash's guitar cut through arenas like fire, and Duff's bass grounded the chaos. Suddenly, 35 years after their debut, Guns N' Roses were back on top. The irony was clear. While many glam bands had faded, and while even Mötley Crüe had retired and returned, Guns N' Roses proved they were timeless. Their decision to be different all those years ago had given them staying power no one else had. Today, when fans look back at the 1980s, two bands often come to mind, Mötley Crüe and Guns N' Roses. One represented glam excess, the other represented gritty reality. Both were dangerous, both were exciting, but only one truly transcended the decade. Guns N' Roses' music still feels alive, still connects with young listeners. Songs like Paradise City and November Rain remain classics. Mötley Crüe, on the other hand, are remembered more for their scandals than their songs. And that was exactly what Guns N' Roses wanted to avoid when they set out to be the opposite. The gamble had paid off. By rejecting the shallow trends of their time, they created music that would outlive the chaos. That's the difference between a band built on image and a band built on raw truth. What Guns N' Roses proved is that authenticity has power. They may have stumbled, they may have fallen apart, but their music never lost its soul. And when they reunited, that soul brought millions of fans back. The lesson was clear. Being yourself, even when it's unpopular, can give you a legacy bigger than fame. They didn't want to be like Mötley Crüe. They didn't want to play dress-up or chase trends. And because of that, they became something greater. Their story is also a warning. Success doesn't protect you from chaos, and being authentic doesn't mean you won't fall apart. But if your foundation is real, you can survive the storms, and that's exactly what Guns N' Roses did. Now, 35 years after their debut, Guns N' Roses stand as proof that their decision to be the polar opposite of Mötley Crüe was the right one. They still sell out stadiums. Their songs are still played on every rock station in the world. They're not just a memory of the 1980s. They're a living, breathing force in music. Mötley Crüe may have been the kings of excess, but Guns N' Roses became the kings of survival. Their story is one of rebellion, chaos, collapse, and resurrection. And through it all, their choice to be different gave them a legacy no scandal could erase. In the end, that's what makes them timeless. They didn't just survive the 1980s, they conquered them. And 35 years later, the world still sings their songs, proving that being the opposite of the trend was the greatest decision they ever made.